Does your wardrobe say future leader or not ready yet? What you wear might be costing you more than you think. We're talking about how to dress like a leader next on Crossroads and Catalyst. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss the thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. I recently saw a post on LinkedIn, and this post was made by an HR professional who was praising a candidate who had shown up to an interview wearing flip flops and wet hair because apparently they had just taken a shower or they were on a vacation, whatnot. And the person got the job, but I think what was most important was what was occurring in the comments in relation to this post, because it was quite split as far as what people thought about showing up in a casual manner to a job interview. Now, to be sure, it definitely matters what kind of job it is and what the company is and what they represent, but it was so telling as to how people thought about showing up in flip flops and wet hair. And there were some who praised the authenticity of this particular candidate, and there were others who were saying that they would never show up to an interview, let alone hire someone for a job who showed up as casual as this person did. And so, of course, that begs the question, what should we do? What should we wear to interviews or even when we present to work? How should we be dressing and how do people perceive us? And it also begs the question, are we confusing authenticity with preparation and readiness? And these are questions that I think are important. And because people are still so split as to what you should look like, how you should dress when you show up to an interview, then we really want to get a good grasp as to what works for us, because we still live in a time, we're still trying to figure out if the remote work option is actually a good thing or not so good thing. So, let alone you start talking about how people should dress, whether it be to an interview or just even in the office space itself. It matters. And why does it matter? Well, I think we have to face the facts that unless we're a millionaire or a billionaire or even the owner of a company, we don't have the luxury to just wear whatever it is that we want or think to a job interview or to work itself. There are some guidelines that we might have to adjust to in order to make our our goals and our objectives reality. And what you wear, your specific attire, contributes to that. And this is why it's important. Because the truth is, we just can't simply afford to ignore how we present ourselves, especially early in our careers. Because if we have even lazy thinking or beyond that, we just are complacent and we're just not interested, we just show a level of disinterest, then it's going to show. People are going to see that. They will understand your lack of or your unwillingness to dress the part. They will see that as you saying, I don't want the part, and that you're shunning it, and there's no need to consider you because you have no interest in it. And so that's really one of the reasons why I think that it's so important. Because it's really not just about the clothes that we wear, it's about the cues that we're giving. People are picking up on the signals that we're giving off, even if we're completely unaware that that's what's happening. And how you're perceived is established before you speak and sometimes even before you perform. And so this begs the question too. Have you ever wondered if what you wear or how you carry yourself might actually be holding you back professionally? Why is this important? Because you have a lot of job seekers, especially some of the new college grads who are entering the workforce, or people who have been in a particular role for quite some time and they've been very comfortable with where they are, and they haven't really seen the necessity to step up their game as far as how they present themselves, and more specifically, how they present their person being and how they dress, how they speak, their body language, their tone of voice. All of those things matter, and you want to pay special attention to this, especially if you have the goal and the desire to be a leader, or if you're trying to continue to promote growth. Maybe you're already a leader, but you want to be taken more seriously. Well, some of the ways to do that might have to do with your appearance. And no, we don't really like that people assess us or evaluate us or even judge us based on how we look, but it's still a fact that people are making assessments and judgments about you based on how you look. And so this is why we want to talk about it. I have interviewed a number of people over the course of my career, and part of what I've done in those interviews is I have brought my team in because I think it's important for team members to interview the candidate as well, because they're going to be developing a working relationship with this person. And some of the interviews that I've been a part of and that my team has been a part of, it's been really interesting to hear the debrief in the aftermath of these interviews, because I can tell you that even the young people, and by young, I mean the 20 somethings, just fairly new out of college, they recognize what they consider to be important when it comes to how someone shows up to a job interview. Because what I've seen in many instances is people will show up, they're dressed pretty casually, and I would say by casual, I mean maybe a pair of slacks and a polo shirt. They might be wearing a pair of loafers, they might be wearing a pair of sneakers. That's how casual some people have shown up to job interviews. And these have not been older people for the most part, these have been younger people who have shown up for these job interviews. Now you have younger people interviewing younger people, and my team would say, I don't know that I take them very seriously because they didn't wear a suit and a tie. Of course, they were talking about a guy. And because most of the ladies, you throw on a pair of slacks and some heels and a sports jacket, or I say a sports jacket, a blazer, and you look pretty professional. Men have to step it up just slightly uh, in some people's minds. And so this was one of the things that was called out. And they thought that for some of the questions that the candidates were asking, specifically as it relates to growth and professional development, they just thought it was interesting that these candidates would ask those types of questions, yet they were not dressed for those types of roles. And so that tells you that it's not just something that this is some old fashioned way, some traditional way of dressing when you come to work. You even have some of the younger people, these new college grads, I say new, you have some younger people who consider that how a person shows up just even for an interview is very telling, and that they will consider that in their overall assessment as to whether or not a person is a good fit for the job. And so I think that that can kind of underscore for us how meaningful it should be to us as to how we show up. Because again, you're trying to convey a message to someone, and what it is that you convey and how you dress can sometimes speak volumes. And so let's get some clarity around how someone should dress for leadership, because it's not just about interviews. Because like I said, if you show up to a meeting and you're trying to make an impression and you're trying to show people that you are someone who can be trusted to be in charge, you are someone who can help to be or you can be supportive, or you can make decisions, and you're trying to progress, well, part of that starts with how people perceive you. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to show up in a suit and tie and a dress and heels or anything along those lines, but what I'm saying is part of what people understand about you is how you present yourself. And leadership perception is about how people see you in a leadership role, period. Okay? And employers and colleagues, they are subconsciously assessing what they see, what they hear, and how you perform. And it matters. And I would say that what one of the things that stands out truly is poor posture. Take three. I would say that one of the things, or several things, contribute to this. Your posture and your body language will matter. People will can take away if you're interested or disinterested based on your posture and your body language. I once had a gentleman come into my office. This was in an interview for an interview, and he was slouched in the seat. He just didn't seem like he was all that interested. Although he was asking what I thought were some really good questions, his body language did not align with the questions that he was asking. So there was a mismatch there. He may not even have realized that this was the signal that he was giving off. And so It's hard to get people to trust what they're hearing if it doesn't match what they're seeing. So pay attention to your body language because it does say something about you. Or and it might say something that is unfavorable to you overall. And even your tone of voice. If you come with an aggressive tone of voice, and aggressive is not the same as assertive because there's a way to assert yourself without being aggressive. If you come with an aggressive tone or with a very timid tone, people are trying to understand, well, does this actually fit in with our team, with our culture? If you're in a meeting, even if you're already an employee and maybe you've already had some encounters with others and maybe they've told you that, hey, you might want to cool it down a little bit. It's because of your tone of voice, your demeanor, and your mannerisms. All of these things play into how you're perceived. And if people are afraid to talk to you, well, then you might want to take a second look as to how you're approaching people and how you're conveying information, even with your tone of voice, because it can be very off putting for others if you're trying to communicate something to them and they can't get past the fact that they think that you're upset. And again, on the flip side, if you're very timid and you're soft spoken, well, people think that you might lack confidence. And if you want people to see you as a leader, well, you don't want to go to both extremes, right? One extreme is the aggressive, people are afraid of you. The other extreme is the timid one, and people they feel like they might be able to run over you because you're so timid and soft spoken. So you want to kind of be somewhere in the middle where people recognize that you are someone that they can talk to, that they can approach, that they can trust, and that they're willing to take some type of guidance from you, guidance or direction from you because you present yourself as a leader. And so all of these things kind of fit in together so that it wraps you up and shows the whole package, which is really what you want. So then the point is not to reduce this down to attire only, because again, it's the entire package. And so we don't want to make it so simplistic to where it's just about clothes, uh, because clothes do matter. And it's important that when you show up to work, when you show up to an interview, whatever the meeting is, whether it's with internal people or external people, it matters. Because I can recall even a time when I showed up to a meeting and I had a meeting with a group of bankers, and I thought that it was just going to be two or three bankers. We were just having a an introductory meeting to familiarize ourselves with one another. And I walked into the room, and there were 10 bankers, and they were all dressed in suit and ties. Now, when I walked in and I saw this, I was pretty amazed because I was first shocked that people still really dress to the nines in this degree, but it was also a little bit satisfying because it meant that I could take them seriously and that they took their work seriously. And that the organization for which they work, they had a standard that said that, hey, this is how we present ourselves to our customers to let them know that we are here to not only work with them, but to serve their business needs. And that was the message that came across to me. And I think that sometimes you can take people a lot more seriously when they're dressed up. And this goes beyond even the business, this and the workplace. This is in just about every other facet of life. If you go out to dinner to a nice restaurant and you start looking around and you see people who are, not dressed as nicely, it kind of changes the atmosphere a little bit. If you go to, I don't know, even a bar, and notice how some people are dressed, it either lends some credibility or it tells you, well, we might want to leave a little early. I don't know. There are a whole host of reasons as to why you want to consider what you wear and how you present yourself, because all of these things play together. So then what kind of choices do we have? Well, I would say that you definitely want to have a mindset shift in relation to how you dress as a leader, because it's not just about putting on clothes. Anybody can put on a nice pair of slacks and a blazer or tie or some heels and a dress. Luxury brands or not luxury brands, you can look the part, but you're going to have to put on confidence like you slide on those pair of pants or as you step into those heels. Whatever the case may be, you have to wear confidence because you want to exude confidence when you walk into a room. And you want to show people I am the person who knows what is going on. I am here and I can provide direction and I can provide assistance. It does make a difference. And then your visual strategy, yes, it does come up. Does come down to the clothes that you wear. I used to talk to a colleague on a pretty regular basis, and we would talk about these kind of things. And one of the things that we would discuss is if you're looking to be promoted, you have to dress for the part that you want. And not only do you have to dress for the part that you want, you may have to start to participate in some of the work so that you can show that you are prepared and you are ready to take the next step up. So go for it. Dress for the part. And if you don't see other people around you doing that, well, all that means is that you're going to stand out, which is exactly what you want. You want to stand out in a good way. And so don't allow what other people do to dictate how you approach your career and how you present yourself, because you're the only one who can really make yourself stand out in the way that you think is going to help you to move forward. And then your language and tone, like I said earlier, you want to make sure that when you're talking to people, that your tone is a reasonable tone. You don't want to come off aggressive or harsh, and you also don't want to come off as too timid and and with I guess with the mindset that, or giving people the mindset that you're incapable of standing up and asserting yourself. It does definitely matter. And then understand the culture in which you're operating. There are a number of companies that do the casual attire, but you have to know that that is the environment in which you're working. And even still, when it comes to working with the external customers of a company like that that has a very casual environment, is that going to be acceptable? How can you set yourself apart in an environment like that? And because most of us are still working in, I would call it a more traditional work environment where there's the call for business type attire. You want to set yourself apart, okay? And understand the culture and don't just blend in. Again, the goal is to set yourself apart so that you can stand out in a sea of bland. And then ask yourself some questions like, how do I want people to describe me when I leave the room? And how do I want them to perceive me? And also, are my mannerisms and attire conveying what I want them to say? Because people are watching. And so, what do you want them to understand by what they see? And so, that is the end of today's episode. And I hope that you got a better understanding of how to dress like a leader. It's going to come down to the confidence. Put on that confidence and your attire. And so, understand the environment in which you're operating when you're showing up for an interview. If you have one, go above and beyond. Make yourself stand out so that you leave an impression not only with how you answer the questions, but with what they see when you walk in. You want them to understand that you are serious about this role. And if that's what it calls for you to do, is to dress according to a different standard, then go for it. You don't have anything to lose by doing so. And I want to encourage you to share this episode with others who you know, and to send me an email about your own story if you have one. You can send an email to connect@crossroadsandcatalyst.com, and be sure to like and follow and subscribe. Be thoughtful, be wise, and be strategic. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters, so make it count. I'll talk to you next week.